Right? And here, this is what that looks like. That having that VV pacemaker inserted, is being inserted in the right ventricle. It goes all the way down. This is your atria up here. So ventricle down here. It goes in down there, stimulating, providing electric shock to this area right here to ensure that the heart is beating the way that it needs to be. Right. So next we'll get into what that looks like on the EKG, and here it is. All right. So this is the intrinsic beat. It almost looks just like a normal QRS, but you see like the shape of the P here. It's kind of big. Oh, make that too short. And then if you look at your T right here, that's kind of wide, and you can tell that there's something going on here. These things that you would know with um, with the pace QRS plus the intrinsic P. You'll see right here that it's firing right before the it's on pace with the QRS, and it's associated it's intrinsic with the P waves. So this is, you see, it's your QRS complex, your T and U, and T and U. And this is actually your P right here, and see, there is nothing here. There's nothing. There's no activity right here, and so this is where the pacemaker will kick in to give you the the beat that you need. Right? The triple D pacemaker is the most modern and most um, physiologic model. It's a universal pacemaker. It um, paces and senses both atrium and ventricle. Right. Um, the what we just learned about, see the VI only it only works with the right ventricle. This one does the triple D, controls the atria and the ventricle to give you even better beat. It's more controlled. All right. It takes advantage of the intrinsic P waves. Atrial pacer will be inhibited if the P wave is detected. A ventricle will be triggered to give a QRS complex. If the patient does not have a QRS complex in preset length of time after the P wave. All right. Rate response is inserted into the right atria and ventricle. And just to clear that up, and what it's saying, what the triple D pacemaker does, because it's inserted in both the atrial and the ventricle. All right. If it is if it notices that, hey, it didn't fire properly, and so there is no P, it's gonna fire to give it the P. Now if it fires the P, if your heart beats and you got your P, the beat starts out good, but then there's a problem, there's no QRS complex, boom, it's gonna fire in the ventricle to trigger the QRS to happen. All right. All right, and that's what we'll see in the next diagram, I believe. Yeah. See again, this is the the DD pacemaker. It's in the ventricle. Again, right ventricle here. It's the right atrium here, and this is where the electric stimuli will be sent to ensure that the beat is made properly. Alright. So with the triple D pacemaker, you get provided 4 options. You can get the intrinsic beats only, which is for the P's and QRS, the pace P, the intrinsic QRS, the pace P wave, the pace QRS, or you can get the intrinsic P wave and the pace QRS. Just depends on whatever the body needs. Okay, whichever one isn't working, triple D is there to make sure it happens. All right. So, and it's just what each one looks like. It's intrinsic beat. See, it's paced. This one right here, it's paced with the P wave. You see, it fires right before the P. This little line right here, that's the pacemaker firing, starting off saying, "Hey, let's go ahead and let's get this party started." All right. Then you have your pace wave, your pace P wave, and your pace Q wave. It's the same thing right here. It's gonna start off saying, "Hey, we need to get this thing started." All right, and it's gonna go off again just to ensure that everything is continuing to go smooth. Um, and then you have your intrinsic P and the pace QRS. I mean, the P came through. We see it's sensing a problem with the QRS complex, so that's what it'll do. It'll fire right after the P to ensure that the beat goes through. All right, and we have a party. All right. On the following strips, you'll be able to tell. We'll look at the different um, pacemakers for each of these next strips coming up. All right. Right. Strip 1. We have we have a lot going on here. First off, without even putting too much thought in this, we see that there's a problem. We see the lack of activity here on this readout. This person is supposed to have a pacemaker, then someone screwed up. The pacemaker hasn't the pacemaker hasn't been placed where it should be placed because it's not picking up what it should be as it should. We have definitely have loss of capture here because it's not picking up on the inactivity here. And I see that there's some undersensing too because I see, and that's going to be noted by the spike in the QRS complex. Look how tall these complexes are. All right, so pacemaker's in, and obviously it's in the wrong spot because it's not picking up what it's supposed to be picking up on, and we can identify that by the the lack of activity going on here, and we know that it's undersensing because of the spike in the QRS complex. All right, so we have strip 2. There's this one looks alright. It's alright. Looks like we got the QRS complex. It's being pasted at the QRS complex. So it's firing when it needs to fire. See ST elevation. Um, so yeah, everything looks good here. I don't have any concerns about that one. Pacemaker's in place and it's doing what it should be doing. Okay, 3. Um, 3 looks good also. We see that the pacemaker is pacing it with the intrinsic P's. And then we see that here. But the P's and the QRS. I apologize. Yeah. We see because we get that initial start saying, hey, this is what you need to be doing, and it starts out and it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, and it starts to like taper off. It's kind of like when you wake up in the morning, or you wake the kid up, and they in there getting dressed, and they mess around and sit on their bed, sit back down on the bed, to put the shoes on or something, and next thing you know, they done fell back to sleep. So you gotta come back in and wake them up, and that's essentially what's going on here. So you come in, you wake them up, they up moving around, then they sit back down on the side of their bed too long, and then you gotta go back in, wake them up again. All right. Well, and this pacemaker looks like it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. All right. 4. Again, just quick eyeball, you see that there's a problem here. It's not enough activity going on. See these pauses in this pacemaker. It's just simply failed to fire, and we know that by the lack of spikes, because clearly should be paced by the QRS complexes, and there isn't one. There should have been one here in this area. Been one here in this area. Yeah, and so on and so forth. And it's not picking up. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. Um, when it's firing here, um, and that's the complex we'll get as a result of it firing, and this is the regular beat of the heart, and see, and it shows some concerns. See how this T wave is looking. The spike in the QRS complex. That's what led them to having to need a pacemaker, and it's not firing the way it should be firing, and um, that's it's an area of concern. Right, strip 5 again. Everything everything looks all right from here. We see pacemakers going off right here. And it beats. It's going off here, and it's going off here. Um, 5 is actually like which one was it? 5 and 4 actually are like so the pacemaker where it's just based off it's going off the data collected by the EKG that led to the pacemaker going in. It's only going to fire when it's needed. So that's what we're seeing. We seen on 4 and 5. I just had to go make sure I brought that back up because I don't want to confuse you all. So that's what we're seeing here. There is no problem. It's firing where it should be firing. Um, Everything looks good. Um, my R to R intervals look good. Let's show my P's, T's. Everything looks good there. Um, just want to share some with you. While it isn't mentioned, I want you to like when you're dealing with, especially when you're looking at these strips as we go through this chapter, or you see one um, later on in life as you're working in the field. A patient that has a pacemaker, you still want to follow your steps for the interpretation and calculating to get the best diagnosis for that patient. You always want to make sure that your T's crossed and your I's dotted. Because again, why this isn't discussed in this chapter, I don't want you guys to think that it's something that you don't have to do. Um, that's just a extra safety precaution, things to look at. You don't want to just look at it and just go off thinking that, hey, this is a problem, and whatever the case may be, and misdiagnosing the patient, because that could result in someone losing their life, and we definitely don't want that. Um, but still, just make sure that you take all this stuff into consideration when you're looking at your strips, even if it isn't warranted. Just make sure that you look at your strips just to ensure that you get the proper diagnosis for that patient. All right. So let's move on. All right. So we got pacemaker malfunctions that failed to fire. The battery could be dead. Connecting wires are interrupted. Oversense and over an artifact. No pacemaker spikes where they should have been. Results in a pause. We kind of see next in those strips that we just looked at, where the pacemaker wasn't going up where it should be. Um, all right, so this is what it looks like when it failed to fire. Um, look back, that's actually what the first practice strip that we just went over looked like. All right, and again, it can be noted by you know it's a problem because again you see the long pause, the lack of activity here. You see the spike in the QRS complexes. All right, so I know that there's a problem. All right. Pacemaker malfunction, the loss of capture, a lack of P or QRS. QRS is following the pacemaker spike. Signal may be too weak. The pacing catheter may have lost contact with the chamber wall. All right. Maybe doing some extraneous activity. Maybe they took a fall or something like that. Um, and that caused the stent to move around. So therefore, it's not getting that electric shock isn't being directed in the area in which it needs to be directed in. All right. So this next example here. This is loss of capture. You see, it's not picking up on anything. It's just here. Again, because the pacemakers are designed to beat when there isn't any activity, um, and it's just going off and it's not picking up what's going on in the heart because it's designed to read in a certain area where it'd be the atria or the ventricle, and if it's not directly in that area, it's not going to read the it's not going to read the rhythm of the heart properly. Right? Under sensing, the pacemaker fires too soon. We'll see spikes inside the T wave, QRS complexes, and sensor. Sensor which means that the sensor needs adjustment, and fractured sensoring wire. I apologize, and or battery failure. All right, and the batteries on these things last from 5 to 15 years. Um, so in that time frame, batteries could have gone out. All right. Um, so we're going to be mindful of that, and that's why it's important to walk through your steps, ask your questions, check the patient's medical history, because you don't want to just look at it and say, "Oh my God, this person's dying," and it's because you don't get anything on the EKG machine, or you're seeing too long of a pause, or whatever the case may be. So just be mindful of that, especially when you know that they have a pacemaker. All right, this is what undersensing looks like. You see here, what's noted in this is that spike in the QRS complex. You see how the pacemaker is firing at the top of the complex. These top of the complex here. Not sure what this is over here, but it's firing. Um, Fire in the wrong location right here. It's just not picking up what it It's not picking up what it needs to because it's going off entirely too fast. All right. So those are the most common malfunctions for a pacemaker. All right. So on these strips, I want to apologize because I actually went over these strips already for the first set of strips, but um, I got my notes mixed up. But here we go. Here we have the loss of capture and the under sensing. Um, again, we know that by the see the spike and the under sensing because of the spike and the QRS complexes. All right, and the lack of capture pacemakers is not followed by the a P or a QRS complex. We see right here, this beat is the pacemaker fired during the QRS. It just fired here, it just fired here, it fired here, and so on and so forth. There isn't any no P waves or QRS complexes following those spikes as they should be. So here we have, this is an example of loss of capture and undersensing. All right. Uh, this patient right here, this is actually good. The pacemaker is doing what it's supposed to do. See, it's firing as it should. Paced by the QRS complex is the P's. Um, P's inverted on this one. Um, See the spikes, the QRS complexes. Again, if you walk through, you answer the question. You see the R interval. Everything is it's pretty legit. Everything looks, just for me eyeballing everything, you can see that everything looks symmetrical. So there isn't a problem here. It's firing the way it should be firing. Um, But something that does concern me looking at it, like the spikes are a little off. As I look at it, I feel like they should have been closer to your P wave here. They feel like they should have been closer to the P waves. So this is something that I would take note of if this was a patient that I was dealing with, because this could possibly be a problem later, especially if they came in to the onset of dizziness and obviously they suffering from vagal syncope. Um, it's a quick simple fix for anyone who has vagal syncope. They just need to make sure that they drink water, and that would help them out a great deal um, with their condition. And when they don't drink water, like that's typically what happens. They'll get dizzy. Sometimes they'll pass out. They won't pass out for too long. Maybe like a minute or two, um, and then they'll be good once they come back to. But you still just want to monitor them. Hopefully that they aren't in a bad situation, in a bad area, like when they fall. So hopefully like they don't have a moment. Say if they're in the bathroom or something like that, and they fall and bust their head, and that could teach all different other problems, or they going down steps or something, fall and break something. All right, so um, here, so we got pacemaker firing before the QRS. See, ST elevation, the complex is inverted here, so we still our intervals look good. So the heart rate should, if you did this, I'm sure you'll get a heart rate somewhere around 72. Um, everything looks good. Everything looks good here. All right. Four, failure to fire. You know, clearly there should be something else following these P waves, um, and there's not. The pacemaker isn't doing its job, and so looks like this person is dying over here. That's an example of failure to fire. And 5, nothing going on here. And if you walk through the steps, you got your heart rate on this. I bet it'll be about somewhere around 60 some. Good RR interval on both those inverted and those upright pacemakers going off exactly when it needs to. So everything looks good here. There's nothing going on there. All right. The problem with traditional pacemaking, they cause scrutiny, abnormal timing between the atria or between ventricle additional pacemakers. Pacemakers pace only the right ventricle, right atrium, or the right ventricle, or both, not the left side. So if one chamber is stimulated before the other, it contracts before the other. Right? I believe that was chapter 1, maybe chapter 2. We learned about the body's natural pacemakers, and whichever one fires the fastest, that's the one that gets through at the time. So that's what we're talking about here. So depending on whichever one fires first, the beats and the firing of the pacemaker, it should be synchronized. But in the event that it's not, that's gonna cause a problem. Got decreased ventricular filling and decreased cardiac output because it's not firing at the right time, or not enough blood is going out, not enough blood is coming in. So you know, be mindful of that. All right, cardiac resynchronization, or CRT, is the use of bioventricular pacemakers, placing electrodes in the right ventricle and right atrium and both ventricles. A patient must be symptomatic with severe heart failure, a widened QRS with a left bundle branch block, or a sinus rhythm. Okay, so if the patient has any of those, and that's when with the pacemaker, that's when we'll go to the CRT to try to get them back on the right path. All right, this is what the bioventricular pacemaker sensing looks like. See, again here, you got your atria, your ventricle, your left ventricle over here. So, and just to make sure that everything is running smooth, everybody's firing, everyone's on the same page, and we won't have a problem. That's when you'll put that in. All right. Cardioversion means changing the heart. Involves a small shock to the heart, usually used to convert supraventricular tachycardia and ventricular tachycardia back to sinus patients. Patient needs to have a pulse. That is the one thing that medical shows and movies get wrong. They always call for a crash car, and they try to shock a person after they've already stated, hey, they don't have a pulse. You can't shock a patient with no activity going on, because what are we starting? What are we trying to get on track? We know that the shocking is used to regulate the heart, and if there isn't anything going on, what do you regulate? You can't regulate nothing. So you need something. So you want to start off with your CPR, or push your epi or whatever, just to get that heart rate started, and then from there we can shock it, do wherever we need to, combine other medications to, if it, we need to push the epi to get it started, or we need to give a beta blocker to bring it down. That's what we need to do. All right. So I just want y'all to be mindful. The next time y'all watch a medical show or movie or something like that, just watch how that works. If you can catch it, if they manage to do a shot of the entire room, like after that happens, see if you can catch the monitor and watch what's going on the monitor. All right. Yeah, it requires synchronization with the cardiac cycle. Synchronizing um, is what differentiates cardioversion from defibrillation. Machine delays delivery of shock until it has synchronized with the patient's QRS complexes. Shock must be delivered at a critical point in the cardiac cycle. Do not try to convert to cardiovert V-fib. Again, just to reiterate what I said, like you have to have something going on in order for you to be able to provide this shock. So the importance of the pacemaker. Um, so you put it where they run the um, the bioventricular pacemaker, where they place the stent in the both uh, both ventricles and the right atrium, just to ensure that everything is on the same page. And so you just want to make sure that, again, just being mindful of that. Everything has to be in sync. Everyone needs to be on the same page with everything that's going on to save that person a lot of turmoil on the back end. All right. Again, I'll never want to go in and just looking at the EKG or whatever the case may be, thinking that you're about to be Superman and save the day. Stop, pull back, reevaluate the situation in its entirety, and then make the adjustments moving forward. This last part, do not try to cardiovert V-fib. The rule of thumb is if it's V-fib, you must defib. All right, check the pulse. Ventricular fibrillation, go ahead, pull the crash cart out, shock the heart, try to get a regular rhythm going, and then you make the adjustments from there. All right, defibrillation. It's a large shock delivered immediately. No synchronizing in defibrillation. Um, just you just defib. Right? We already know it's a problem. We're not trying to wait to see what's going on. We're not doing this where you want to breathe in. We're not checking like checking your respiration here. We're not waiting for you to breathe in or anything like that. The heart's beating fast, and we need to try to get it under control. Just shock them, all right? Because that shock is going to provide, if done, if it's enough electricity being emitted, that electricity will cause the heart to stop, and once it starts firing back up, it should be on track. Um, Treatment of no choice for ventricular fibrillation and pulseless VTAC. It's just what I just said. If it's V-fib, you want to make sure that you defib. Same thing. If the person has VTAC and they don't have a pulse, go ahead and just defib them. So you have three kinds of monitor defibrillators. A combination of cardiac monitor with three or five lead cable plus a cardioverter defibrillator. They come in monophasic or biohazard types. This is the kind that you typically see in the hospital. Yeah, the AICD is implemented. It's an implanted device that is programmed to analyze the abnormal rhythms, kind of like a pacemaker, so to speak. And it delivers a small internal electrical shock to abort any abnormal rhythms. So, like the opposite of the pacemaker. Why they kind of acting the same way, but it's they on like the opposite ends. The pacemaker gives the electricity to get the heart going, and the AICD, if something comes up, is going to shock it and get it out. It's like it's almost like playing a video game. Like you just killing something off. Like, hey, you shouldn't be here, so you trespassing. I got the right to shoot you. Essentially, what's going on there. You have your AED. It's a defibrillator meant for the use of the lay public, which means anybody can use this. Anybody can use an AED. They have instructions on what like how to use it. So what you do, you know what I'm saying, you make sure the person laying down in supine position. Go ahead and place the electrodes on their chest, turning on, and the AED will do the rest. It's going to administer the shock when needed. You want to make sure that you just want to make sure that you're not touching them, because that electricity flowing through their body can be transferred to you. So just be mindful of that if you ever find yourself in a situation where you have to use AED. And I'm pretty sure y'all probably learned that when y'all were in CPR. And it requires no medical or technical knowledge by the rescuer, because that all that stuff, everything you need to know is on the instructions on the machine. All right. So the monitor defibrillator, and this is what you'll see in the movies and hospitals. These are the pads that you will see them place on people's chest and yell clear. All right. This is typical what your typical AED looks like. They'll be in a little bag, posted up somewhere. And this is what the AICD looks like. You see it here. It can be seen here. It can be seen here under the patient's skin. All right. Therapeutic hypothermia is cooling post cardiac arrest patients' body temperature down to about 90 to 93 degrees Fahrenheit. On average, the human body temperature is like 98 point something, 98.7. It's the average body temperature for a human. So you would want to try to get it down below that, because you get cold. As the body cools off, the heart is going to pump. It's going to pump slower. So at that lower rate in which the heart is pumping, again, it's easier to control. And it's not emitting as much blood, so you don't have to worry about having anything damaged or whatever. Too much blood being pumped by a heart, especially if that blood clot is in your brain. The more blood being pumped to that area and it can't get through is causing the area to expand, and that's causing a problem. So just be mindful of that, and that's why we use the therapeutic hypothermia to cool the body temperature down, just so we can get a better grasp of those things. Lowering body temperature decreases the body's metabolic demands, preserves brain function. EKG effects during the cool down phase. See a prolonged PR, QRS, and QT intervals. Atrial and ventricular arrhythmias can be seen. Sinus tachycardia, slowing to sinus bradycardia. And hypokalemia. All that can be seen on the EKG. Rewarming phase is the most dangerous time. As hyperkalemia is introduced, ventricular arrhythmias. You want to watch for pointy T waves, because while you can bring the body temperature down like real quick, that's not a problem. But if the body gets too hot too fast, it's a whole different ball game. So you want to be mindful of that when we are working to warm up the patient. You'll see that that's why they do the bypasses and bypass surgeries. That keeps the blood running at a certain speed to keep it a certain temperature. And when they take the person off bypass and all that blood goes back into the body, it's at a fairly good temperature, so the body can function accordingly. Again, it's like just think about any time that you've ever got like hot too fast. Just like on a normal basis. Like some people have nosebleeds, and things of that nature. So these again is why little simple stuff like that is why you want to be mindful about heating the body up too quick. All right, and we're done.